Welcome to the Watch and Cut channel, where tonight we're going to focus more on the cut. You guys watch enough YouTube already. Do I really need to remind you to subscribe, hit that bell? Well, according to popular science, yes, I do. So yeah, don't be shy. Hit both of those things right now. So the Skaha. I will feel confident in giving you an accurate review, having a long history dating back 2 channel names and 4 knives. My first Skaha being the version 1 in blue G10. Then I moved on to a carbon fiber version that became available later in the V2. Then I got a V2 carbon fiber version, or shall I say a V2.5. And then, now, the latest version that I will unveil. So that's a total of 4. So let's meet your maker, John Goodmanson, owner and operator of Northarms Knives, up in Canada with his son Mike. John worked in the tech industry for over 20 years in network production engineer teams, and many other of his assets that he's applied in his knife making. When popular YouTuber Nick Shabazz made these known, they got popular to the point that production got backed up. Since then, John and Mike have refined their process and making their existing design just a little bit more refined, and not taking out what was good out of the V1 in the first place. I will admit, though, I do miss those CNC cut blades, which that is subjective, of course. As most will tell you, there's a few things that will knock your socks off when first handling a Skaha, like the ergonomics of high contour set of scales, the lightweight nature despite the full-size feel in the hand, and the surprising feel when you deploy the knife. It's almost as if the knife could never fail to flip open, yet it's surprisingly easy to overcome the detent deployment. As far as the looks department, it's rather difficult to say it's going to blow you away. To me, it's an attractive, honest, and simple knife. No high-speed, low-drag frills. One thing I do miss about the V1 to the V2.5 is the CNC cut blades, as mentioned earlier. In the later V2 version, they went away from the CNC cut blades to streamline their production process by using traditional water jet cut blades. There are those purists of the Skaha, if there is such a thing, well, like myself, that may prefer the CNC cut blade that would show these awesome lines, similar to like what you see on a Norseman. And let me tell you, I've mildly expressed this to Mike myself. But halt right there. There are a couple ways to look at this. First is the logical sense, where you decrease production time, which means more knives out to more people who want them and less backlog. There is another thing to mention, like it's more likely to have a slight cutting advantage due to not having as much surface area like the CNC blades do, therefore less friction, meaning a higher performing slicer. I'm really reaching for the stars with that theory. Anyway, it's true, I think. Then there's the other way of looking at it. I always thought this knife looks great, but comparing to other modern designs out there, it's a bit vanilla in the aesthetics department. So what should we expect from the Skaha? Should we expect fancier materials? We should mention where the Skaha lacks in the fancy carbon fiber department. It really makes up in the specs. The simple looks of this knife is a bit deceiving because it's full of cool tricks, and I'm going to point out a few of these things right now. So while we've reached this part of the video, let's introduce the latest project I did with the boys at Northarms Knives. I have been contacting Mike over the years in various email exchanges. In the last 3 years, I've asked him a few times if we could do something with a fancy carbon fiber. I was told no due to the complexity of the production process, which made sense, but over the years, I continued to pop the question, and I finally got the boys to agree to try out to make some fancy Skahas. The agreement, after discussions, was that I provide high-end carbon fiber, meaning without voids, and that the carbon fiber was going to be cut to a specific size and thickness to fit the jig. So with my prior purchasing experience, I knew that Fatcarbon would be a great place to fit those needs. Fatcarbon agreed and let me pick their newest Dark Dunes pattern carbon fiber. At first, I wanted to send them something bright like this, but I felt being a little more reserved this time and staying more traditional tones with a Damascus looking pattern carbon fiber. So 3 were made. One went to Dirk Warning YouTube, which you can find a video on. The other went to my coworker, which primarily uses it as an everyday carry and is really enjoying this special knife. So from this point forward, we will use this version to finish out the video with the Skaha V2.75, aka the Fat Skaha. So back to those interesting things that I found about the knife. I want to point out the ergonomics on this knife are more than just good. They're really good. It's still relatively thin, but not super thin. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy a slim carry, but with the contouring of this knife, it just feels durable and it feels like I can bear down on it without worrying about hot spots or it just slipping out of my hand. As of right now, you have the choice of various G10 colors and carbon fiber. The scales are not skeletonized, and I think that allows for more rigidity, which is good. This knife is very comfortable to handle, and the neutrality of the design of the handle makes it fit most hands comfortably. I also want to point out the hardware is fairly uniform in design and looks durable and very high quality. They definitely look like they can withstand the test of time, but be warned, if you're trying to take the Skaha apart, the Skaha has very tight tolerances and some encouragement with the plastic pry bar may be necessary to separate the scales after all the screws are apart. The weight on these Skahas when they first came out was quite astounding for its size. G10 at 3 ounces and especially carbon fiber at 2.7 ounces. When comparing like-sized folding knives, there aren't many that contend. Another positive things about this knife is the price has varied very little over the years. Early on starting about $185 for the V1, now for the same G10 V2 version, you're looking about $233. Carbon fiber at $250. I can really appreciate the way they have worked hard to keep the cost low over all these years. But wait, there's more. The S35 is a good choice. It's a well-rounded steel and it's very stainless. I've heard that they're also experimenting in MagnaCut in the future and also expanding to new different fancy carbon fibers. Not yet disclosed as far as the details, but I can show you by mine that they are definitely looking into it. These guys are super cool, they really know what they're doing, and I really do love the Skaha. The classic drop point design is perfect for everyday tasks and more. The finish is really durable in the way that it's done, and I really like the way that this one shimmers in the light. It's almost a reminiscence of a Holt Spectre blade finish, with a high polish and a slight stone wash. And I hope they do decide to one day bring the CNC cut blades back, as I found this to be one of the visual signatures of the Skahas when they first came out, and made it stand out aesthetically. The lock is going to be reliable. It's a nested liner lock, it's very easy to access, and it's very well chamfered, allowing for a pleasurable feel when disengaging the lock that follows through with the action that rivals a Holt Spectre. This is due to the amazing tolerances and the flat dome detent ball design. Speaking of the flat dome detent ball, this also allows an incredibly fast and reliable and crisp deployment each and every time. The clean break reminds me of a well-tuned 1911 trigger. The deployment is just a signature feel to this knife. All the Skahas do it. And I have felt various Skahas over the years, and the action does vary from knife to knife, but the deployment seems to be the same. The Skaha runs on bearings, and the action speaks for itself. It's something that a knife priced at this price range just really starts making you think about how good a knife can be sub $300. The pocket clip is meh looking to me. Not bad, but the paperclip look just doesn't scream class, if you know what I mean. It's a bit disappointing to me that they've stayed with this clip for so long, and the V1 did have a stainless steel bent flat clip, but the V2 was considered an improvement with this paper style clip, similar to what you'll find on some Spydercos. But to be real, yes, it works great, and it's cheap to replace, and there are no sharp edges on it, so functionality-wise, it's fantastic. But when it comes to all the upgrades on this knife, I'd rather pay a little bit more money and get a cool milled clip. Lastly, since I'm complaining, let's finish this off with the standoffs. They do the job, but that's all they're really doing, and they're so boring. Even if you want to save costs by not using titanium, I would still consider some flared design spacers to give it a little bit more visual appeal. As it stands right now, it looks very industrial and plain. But here's a free tip for you, Mike. You could make a full-length backspacer that fits into the barrel spacers sandwiched between the scales, and this might even fit the older models, and you can make them in various colors, and that would give the knife maybe a little bit more visual appeal. Imagine if you made one out of copper with this carbon fiber. How sweet would that be? So let's wrap this up with my conclusion from owning a few of these. The first thing you're going to ask me is, why did I sell them off? Well, in all honesty, I always had a friend that kept buying them every time I owned one. And in the end, I was always on the list for another one. And I had so many knives, so no worries. Spread them around. The thing is about the Skahas is that they're very easy to sell, but they're not very easy to replace. And the wait list can be over a year sometimes, or more. It's got enough size, and it's using some higher end materials like S35 and carbon fiber. This is definitely a knife I could be proud to carry every day. Another thing I don't want to forget to do is thank John and Mike for generously allowing this custom project to come along. And I also want to thank Fatcarbon. With Fatcarbon over the years, I found them to be very attentive, quick to respond, and great worldwide shipping and very fair prices that literally kills the competition. So don't forget to subscribe and watch my podcast show, EDC Hour with Dirk and Alex, where you can meet knife makers, YouTubers, and collectors live. Until next time, this is the Watch and Cut channel, out for the evening.